Welcome back. Did you know, according to the Government of Canada, 1 in 6 couples in Canada experience infertility? This number has doubled since the 1980s. Today we are joined by Nazima and Riyad Khan, who will be sharing their own journey on dealing with infertility. Nazima works as a registered nurse in a labor and delivery ward, and her husband, Riyad, works as a teacher. They've shared their story at a seminar on Islam and adoption organized by Amal Fertility, a support group for Muslims struggling with infertility. Let's hear their own story on coping with this issue. Nazima, Riyad, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
So we're talking about infertility today, and this is something that's very private for a couple, and I'm just wondering, how did you guys decide to start talking about it? Because this is also not the first time that you're talking about it.
I think what happened is when we started talking about adoption between each other, we realized that there weren't a lot of resources out there for us. We didn't know anyone who was going through infertility. Sometimes people might have figured it out between us. It was 7 years that we hadn't had any children, and you get that dreaded question, when is it going to happen?
Of course.
So I think people had an idea about it. I think you realize it just feels so personal. You feel like you're the only ones going through it, but you forget the fact that you have your parents and your in-laws, and these are people that are actually supporting you through it as well. I think people who are going through infertility sometimes choose to isolate themselves, possibly as a coping mechanism, but they don't realize that in some ways it's harming them as well, because you're trying to always put up a strong front, and that can be hard on yourself and the couple. We went through a tragic experience. I had emergency surgery to save my life, and everyone knew about that. It was a hysterectomy, so I was told that I would not be able to have children. So that was our point where we started really talking about our plans to adopt. We had actually looked into adopting before all this had happened,
Okay.
but this was kind of when people came to see me in the hospital, I was like, don't worry, because everyone was like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear. I'm like, it's a horrible situation. However, we're going to adopt. And it was actually, the more we talked about it, interestingly enough, it brought us strength. It was like you're trying to convince someone else that it's going to be okay, and it's a reminder to yourself that it is going to be okay. Do you want to?
Yeah, it was a trying experience, and
Yeah.
it was a tough time, obviously. Infertility is very emotional for a lot of couples, including ourselves. But I think, we found strength in one another. We had the support of our families, and it was hard, but at least we had that support network around us, and it allowed us to get through the difficult times. Heading into her surgery, we had that family support. Everyone was there, and it just really made things a lot easier for us. It was still hard, but
Yeah.
it made it easier.
Now, you guys are talking a lot about dealing with it as a couple. What about individually? How did you deal? Because I'm sure when you got married, you think that you're going to get pregnant, have kids. How did you come to terms with that as individuals?
Yeah, I think it was hard, especially because we're both family-oriented people. We got married young. We were thinking we're going to start a family.
How old were you guys when you guys got married?
We were both 21.
Ah, that's very young.
Yeah, we were 21. We were still finishing off our studies, and when we got married, we were both on the same page and wanting to start a family, because we were, again, both very family-oriented. And it didn't happen the way we had imagined it to be. But I think it was it's important that we found strength in each other, and we found strength in our faith. Personally, that's what we had to keep reminding ourselves. So I can speak for myself that we know that God is the one who He's the best of planners. He's the one who decides if a couple were to have a child, etc. That is what I think I found peace with. So it was hard again, but I think that the faith really, allowed us to get through that.
What about you, Nazima?
We're very different personalities.
Yeah.
So I'm like a real talkative person, a real vocal person, and he tends to be more quiet. So sometimes I'd be like, talk to me about it. What are you feeling? What are you thinking? And he's like, I'm okay. Don't I think what happens is you also try to be strong for each other. So sometimes you're also putting up a front for the other person. I think what would happen throughout this whole journey was we would take turns being strong. So there'd be days when I was really strong and I'd help him get through it. And then there was days that I'm like, I can't do this. This is so hard and it's not working. Why isn't it working? And then he was the one who was strong. Again, like Riyad said, our family and friends were great. Our family, we didn't talk to a lot of our friends at that point when we were going through infertility and any of our
And at
fertility.
what point, when you guys say you didn't talk to your friends, or at what point did you start talking about it during the duration?
I don't think until I had my hysterectomy anyone.
So how many
actually
years?
knew. 7
Yeah.
7 years.
7 years into it, and then you start to talk about
Yeah.
it.
So I think it was more, we did have support from our family. We have, a lot of family members that were supportive throughout the whole process. We did try fertility treatments, and everyone was there for us, our immediate family. Again, I think we chose not to talk to people also thinking that it might be easier. We didn't want the questions of, so did it work? Is anything happening?
Yeah.
How are you feeling? It almost felt like that would have been too much pressure. In hindsight, everything changes. Now when we think about it, it would have been great to have told some friends and have them as support as well. But I think for me, I coped by definitely talking. So I talked to my sister and him and, my mom and his mom, and that really helped.
Now, what about, you guys mentioned it's great that you have family support. What about from the community when you did decide, okay, we're going to go through the adoption route? What was the response from the community?
When we were looking into adoption, I think it was still very much a new topic within the Muslim community. I can see that people were almost taken aback when we were.
Can you, sorry, really quickly, what year are we talking?
So this was in 2009.
Okay.
Is when we really started thinking about it. We started the process, and then I would ask people like, I'm involved in the Muslim community, so I would see imams and I would see visiting scholars, and I would approach the topic with them. And unfortunately, I didn't get the response that I was expecting.
Which was what?
So I mean, when I approached the topic, I was expecting some positive response and thinking that it's a good thing, because in our religion, taking care of an orphan child is something that's is definitely it is beneficial, it's rewarding, and it's encouraged, and it's in our history. So I didn't get that feeling when I spoke to them initially. It was more so the do's and don'ts, right? It was more so there are a lot of limitations with regards to adopting in terms of Islamic law. So just be mindful of those things. So I didn't get that warm and fuzzy feeling from asking them about adoption, and I was getting advice, and I was asking, can a young Muslim couple adopt a child? Is it something that's permissible within our religion? And again, it was just more so, here are the restrictions, and it wasn't like you're doing a great thing. Just be mindful of the restrictions, but you're doing a great thing.
Were the restrictions a long list?
It wasn't. As we did more research, I mean, there was a handful of items that we had to address, we had to discuss, but it wasn't restrictive, and it definitely was not going to stop us from proceeding with the adoption process.
And Nazima, anything from you in terms of other support systems? So I'm guessing, Riyad, you went to some of the community. What about were there any organizations around at that time that you looked to?
There might have been at that time. I think I didn't look into it as much as I probably should have at that time. However, more recently we came across a support group called Amal Fertility. And I was thinking that I wish they were around when we were going through this. The first time we went to one of their meetings, it was actually a seminar, and they asked us to speak. There were almost 100 people at that seminar, and it was wonderful. It's sad to see so many people going through it, but it was so wonderful because everyone was sharing their experiences and everyone was bringing support. Either there's people going through the exact same thing, or there's people going through it differently or at different times, and it was great to just be able to share your experiences and advice. So I didn't necessarily seek out a lot of support, I guess I would say. I felt I was well supported with my family, so I didn't feel, I think I did a little bit online, but this support group was amazing. And after, experiencing it, because I don't think you ever forget those feelings that you've gone through. I really, just because we have adopted, I don't think you ever forget the feelings of infertility. There's some real raw, hard feelings that you go through. And when I would hear people's stories, it would bring me right back to how I felt at that moment. So at that time, I didn't seek out any support groups, but definitely I would advise anyone going through it that it would be really beneficial.
So, and where can people go to find out more information, on infertility, or even the Amal group, if that's something that you guys advocate on behalf of?
Yeah, I think we really found that the support group was beneficial. I think that a lot of people can find solace in knowing that at least there's this group out there that can provide that support, emotional support. So they're a great resource. There are definitely other resources within the community. We have a Twitter account and an email address that people can reach out to us. So we provide support, just advice and support about the entire process, infertility, adoption, etc. So there's definitely a lot of support out there, but you have to take that initial step, and you have to be able to seek out the help. As you mentioned earlier, infertility is a very private matter, and it's hard for people to overcome that and want to speak out. As we mentioned, we didn't necessarily speak to our friends at the time because, again, it's such a private matter, and you don't want to. You feel that,
it, right?
yeah, and you feel that let's just keep it with ourselves and struggle is like the silent struggle. But the more we spoke about it, the more we reached out to people, we realized that it allowed us to have that support and get through the entire process.
And Amal Fertility, you can connect with them on Facebook.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I know, I've never spoken about this. I've read about it, so it's a challenging topic, and I really appreciate you guys coming on and sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
so
Thank you
much.
for having us.
Hey YouTube, we hope you benefited from this video. If you liked it, or if you didn't, let us know in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning more, check out some of our other videos. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.